this is me, MC of Healthy by George, and today is Sunday. I'm having to repeat my episode because something happened, and the episode I posted on Sunday, for some reason, started doing slow motion, so I don't know why. But I'm coming back to you to repeat the things I shared on this past Sunday about my muscle mass, and I've been on the GLP1 drug, GIP drug called tirzepatide for over a year. And so now my concern is muscle, and what is my muscle to fat ratio. So think about subscribing. I'm here every Sunday and Tuesday, just bringing kind of the basic information for how can we stay healthier and stronger as we get older. So one of the biggest concerns I have as I'm on this GLP1, GIP1 drug, tirzepatide, is really what is my muscle to fat ratio. Because one of the biggest problems as we get older is we lose muscle mass every year. And the only way to really maintain muscle is to eat enough protein, make sure you're doing weightlifting kinds of exercises, and really be intentional about muscle. And I believe when you're on a weight loss journey using these GLP1, GIP1 drugs like Ozempic, Wegovy, tirzepatide, Mounjaro, Zepbound, that you really need to pay attention to that, because you could be losing muscle plus fat as you're losing weight because we have such a reduced appetite. You know, sometimes it's very difficult for me to get enough protein in. So one of the things I talked about last week is getting what's called a DEXA scan that you probably have heard of because people get it generally when they're looking at bone density for potential osteoporosis. And yearly that's something that we women do because we're going into menopause. And that's a concern because estrogen helps us hold on to our calcium and keeps our bones strong. But I've never had it done where the full gold standard also looks at your skeletal muscle. It also looks at your subcutaneous fat, and it also looks at your visceral fat, and basically gives you some kinds of ratios about how you're doing with regards to muscle to fat. So one of the things I want to do, I've looked into it here in New York. They have several places that I can schedule this because I think a lot of people are starting to realize that this is information that we don't typically get as part of our routine medical workups. We get the bone mineral density scan, but we do not get muscle to fat ratios of any kind. So we're clueless. I feel so clueless in this area, and so I know that knowing what my skeletal muscle and my fat is will give me a motivation to stay engaged with weightlifting. Right now, I'm a member of the Three Ladies podcast, and we're doing a 30-day challenge, and I'm putting myself on the block of committing to 30 straight days of weightlifting, shifting between upper and lower body, at least 20 minutes a day. And in the past, I have so struggled with this. So why is it important, and what is a DEXA scan? Well, DEXA scans are pretty straightforward. They are a very low dose x-ray where they give you a complete detailed image of your bones. It also can give you a detailed image of where you have muscle, skeletal muscle, and visceral fat, and subcutaneous fat. And basically, it can be a powerful sense of information. You can also get somehow a basal metabolic rate determined through this kind of a measurement. And you can also get what's called a resting metabolic rate. So there are various locations here in New York who have offered these things as packages where you can pay something like $300 or $400. Because I think a lot of people are starting to realize that there's a lot of things that we need to do personally that are not covered by our medical insurance, but we can be intentional and start to investigate what it is that we need. The other thing that has become more popular, and I think this is something that's seen more in like maybe nutrition or wellness, these wellness companies or things that are popping up, and it's called a 3D body scan. And this is where technology of lasers and lights and some other types of kind of things that kind of go beyond my understanding, they create a three-dimensional image of your body. Now, it's not traditional. It has these very advanced cameras and sensors. I think it's been used in the fashion industry a lot. And now it's being something that's looked at in the world of, where we can figure out these items that would be helpful for us as fitness and wellness. Because again, it tells us about our fat and muscle distribution. It allows us to see our body image in a more concrete way that's kind of outside of ourselves. So you can kind of track what's happening. It can help you monitor the changes of your body shape, which I'm kind of fascinated about because this is something hard for me to get a sense of. So I think, this is something that I might do to investigate more. I'm not sure I'm going to have enough time between now and maybe November, but I'm definitely going to look into it and see how I can understand more about what is my muscle to fat ratio. And then the other thing I'm very fascinated by is this whole idea that you can somehow measure your metabolic rate. Because I think for some reason I don't have a very fast metabolism. And you can now get what's called a basal metabolic rate, which is pretty much telling you how many calories does your body need at the basic level of when you're at rest. And the basal metabolic rate is like a very low, strict process. You kind of have to do, I think, some fasting. You have to get ready for it. You have to have a certain amount of sleep. You don't have to have any caffeine before you do it. I think you come fasting or something. So, they really work for you to try and come up with a way that you get this sense of a measurement of your basal metabolic rate. I think sometimes I've seen it in the past where you could do this in a pod of some kind. I don't know. But the resting metabolic rate is something that's a little less strenuous or strict. You don't have to have the fasting or making sure that you don't drink caffeine, or you don't have to come in making sure you slept 8 hours. And what it does is it gives you something that's a little more probably close to what your typical, if you did nothing during the day, that you basically would burn this many calories. Because I've been working with dieting and tracking my foods and tracking my movement and tracking my water and tracking everything, fats, proteins. I'm really working hard to understand more deeply what is it that makes my body function, and what is it that's going to give me the nutrients and the ability to stay healthy longer as I get older. Now, the difference between a basal metabolic rate and a resting metabolic rate is that maybe the resting metabolic rate is a little higher because you're not doing just the minimal. You're doing just general kind of sedentary, getting up and down, taking your trash out, maybe the occasional walk the dog, but it's basically looking at, well, what if you just sat around and watched TV all day, that kind of thing. So I think I want to go after this resting metabolic rate and see, is there some way that I could do something to rev up my metabolism? So again, in summary, I'm looking into a DEXA where it will measure my skeletal muscle ratio to my fat, and it will also show me my subcutaneous fat, that's the fat under your skin, versus the visceral fat, that's fat that's around your organs and generally internally, more deeply kind of scattered through your body. So that's the key, is how can we get rid of the fat? How can we grow to have more muscles? How can we improve our metabolic rate? These are all things that I'm really focusing on, especially now that I've been a year into this GLP1 drug and I've seen great benefit in weight loss. But I want to make sure that I'm not just that I'm only losing fat and I'm not losing muscle. So join me, friends, here every Sunday and Thursday on YouTube, where I'm just sharing things about, health and well-being and how we can be intentional, because we have this one precious life, and I want us to live it to the longest, fullest expression of what it can be. Bye-bye.